My husband's friendship with his coworker is tearing me apart. Throwaway because my friends know my main and I can't deal with their pity right now. Hey Reddit, I'm in a really tough spot and honestly, I don't know where else to turn. Maybe some of you have been through something similar or can offer some perspective because right now, I feel completely lost and betrayed. My husband, Mark, 38, not his real name, and I have been together for 10 years, married for 7. We've always been solid. Not like some fairy tale romance, but a comfortable, loving partnership. We have our routines, our inside jokes, we support each other. Or at least, I thought we did. About 6 months ago, a new person started working at Mark's office. Her name is Chloe, 26, also not her real name. Mark mentioned her a few times in passing. Oh, Chloe's having a tough time with a breakup, or Chloe's cat is sick. Nothing that raised any red flags at the time. He's a generally empathetic guy, so it didn't seem weird that he'd be friendly with a new colleague. But slowly, subtly, things started to change. Mark started staying later at work more often. He'd say it was because of a new project, deadlines, whatever. I didn't question it at first. We all have those busy periods in our jobs. But it became a pattern. 2, 3 nights a week, he wouldn't get home until 8 or 9 p.m., sometimes even later. Then there was the phone. He's always been pretty open with his phone, leaving it around, no password paranoia. But lately, he's been glued to it. He'd be texting while we were watching TV, even at the dinner table sometimes. If I asked who he was talking to, he'd just say work stuff or Chloe's having a rough day. Again, I tried to be understanding. Breakups are tough, sick pets are stressful. I remember going through my own rough patches and appreciating friends who were there for me. But the rough days seemed to be happening a lot. Chloe was apparently going through a never-ending series of personal crises, the breakup, the sick cat, a family issue, a problem with her apartment. And Mark was always there to support her. He'd stay late to talk to her, text her constantly, even take extra coffee breaks with her during the day, according to things he'd let slip. That's when the little voice of doubt started whispering in the back of my mind. It started small, a tiny seed of insecurity. But it grew, fed by the late nights, the constant phone buzzing, the vague explanations. I started feeling replaced. Like Chloe's problems were more important than our life together. I tried to talk to Mark about it. Gently, at first. Honey, you've been working so late lately. Is everything okay? His response was always the same, yeah, just a lot on at the moment. Chloe's having a tough time and I'm just being a supportive colleague. But his tone felt off. Defensive, almost. And the lack of detail was frustrating. He'd talk about work in general, but when I asked specifically about what was keeping him so late, he'd become vague again. Just things you wouldn't understand. That stung. We usually shared everything. My anxiety started to ramp up. I'd find myself checking his phone when he was in the shower. I know, it's not great, but I felt desperate. There was nothing overtly incriminating, just lots of friendly-sounding texts between him and Chloe, offering support, asking how she was doing. But the sheer volume of communication felt excessive for a work friendship. I started noticing other changes in him too. He seemed more distant, less engaged in our conversations. He wasn't as affectionate. Our intimacy, which had always been good, started to dwindle. When I tried to initiate anything, he'd be tired or distracted. It felt like he was emotionally unavailable, and I had a sinking feeling I knew where that emotional energy was going. I confided in my best friend, Sarah, ironically, also named Sarah. She listened patiently, but I could see the worry in her eyes. She validated my feelings, saying it sounded like more than just a casual work friendship. She suggested I talk to Mark more directly, express my concerns clearly. So I tried. I sat him down one evening, after a particularly late night at the office. I told him how I was feeling, insecure, worried, like he was pulling away. I told him I was uncomfortable with the amount of time and attention he seemed to be giving Chloe. His reaction wasn't what I'd hoped for. He became defensive, even a little angry. "You don't trust me?" he asked, his voice rising. "Chloe is just a colleague who's going through a hard time. I'm just being a decent human being. But it feels like more than that, Mark, I said, my voice trembling. The late nights, the constant texting, it feels like she's become your priority. That's ridiculous, he snapped. You're being paranoid. Just because I'm being a good friend to someone doesn't mean anything is going on. The argument went nowhere. He accused me of being jealous and controlling. I felt unheard and dismissed. It was like he was more concerned with Chloe's feelings than with mine. Things have been tense ever since. I find myself constantly analyzing his behavior, looking for clues. Every time his phone buzzes, my stomach clenches. Every time he says he has to work late, a wave of suspicion washes over me. I hate feeling this way. I hate the insecurity, the constant knot of anxiety in my chest. I hate the feeling that the man I love is slipping away from me, and I'm powerless to stop it. What makes it even harder is that I don't have any concrete proof of anything going on. Just my gut feeling, the changes in his behavior, the sheer amount of time and emotional energy he seems to be investing in this other woman. It's like I'm living in this constant state of uncertainty, not knowing if I'm being paranoid or if my worst fears are actually coming true. I've thought about reaching out to Chloe myself, but that feels crazy and confrontational. What would I even say? Hey, back off my husband? It feels like it would just make me look insecure and irrational. I've also considered talking to some of Mark's other colleagues, trying to get a sense of their dynamic, but that feels like a huge breach of trust and could backfire spectacularly. So here I am, Reddit. Feeling lost, hurt, and completely unsure of what to do. Is this just a really intense work friendship? Am I being overly jealous and insecure? Or is my gut feeling right, and is something more going on? Has anyone else been in this situation? How did you handle it? Any advice, no matter how blunt, would be appreciated right now. I feel like I'm drowning in my own anxiety and need a lifeline. Update. My husband's friendship with his coworker, I confronted her. Hey Reddit, wow. So, a lot has happened since my last post. The anxiety and uncertainty were eating me alive. I read through all your comments, and the overwhelming consensus was that my gut feeling was probably right and that I needed to do something more proactive. The advice ranged from direct confrontation with Mark to gathering more information. Ultimately, I did something, maybe a little impulsive, maybe necessary. I confronted Chloe. It wasn't planned. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I had taken a day off work, feeling completely drained and unable to focus. Mark had said he had a late meeting, surprise surprise. For some reason, a wave of clarity, or maybe it was just desperation, washed over me. I knew where his office was. I knew Chloe worked there too. I just went. The drive over was a blur of nerves and a strange sense of determination. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel, and my heart was pounding in my chest. I kept telling myself I needed answers, one way or another. I couldn't keep living in this limbo of suspicion and hurt. When I got to the office building, I felt a moment of panic. What was I even going to say? Just barge in and accuse this woman of, what? Being friends with my husband? It sounded ridiculous even in my own head. But I pushed through the lobby, asked the receptionist, who looked at me a little strangely, for Chloe's department, and somehow found my way there. The office was a typical open-plan setup, with rows of desks and a low hum of computers. I scanned the faces, feeling completely out of place and awkward. Then I saw her. She was younger than I imagined, with long dark hair and a focused expression as she typed on her computer. My breath caught in my throat. I walked over to her desk, my legs feeling like lead. She looked up, a polite but questioning expression on her face. Chloe? I asked, my voice sounding a little shaky. Yes, she replied, her eyebrows slightly raised. Hi, I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. My real name. I'm Mark's wife. Her eyes widened slightly, and the polite expression vanished, replaced by something I couldn't quite read, maybe surprise, maybe a hint of defensiveness. Oh, she said, her voice flat. Hi. There was an awkward silence. I hadn't really thought past this initial introduction. I just knew I needed to see her, to look her in the eye. I wanted to talk to you, I finally managed to say. She leaned back in her chair, her arms crossed. About what? About my husband, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. About your friendship. Her expression hardened. Mark and I are colleagues. We work together. I know, I said. But it seems like it's more than just work. He's been spending a lot of time talking about you, staying late to support you. It's been difficult for me. She scoffed softly. Mark is a kind person. I've been going through some things, and he's just being a friend. A friend who he texts constantly, even when he's with me? I challenged. A friend who requires him to stay at the office until all hours of the night? Sometimes work is demanding, she said, her tone sharp. And yes, I've had some personal issues. Mark has been supportive, and I appreciate that. I don't see what business it is of yours. Her defensiveness fueled my own frustration and hurt. It's my business because he's my husband. His late nights and constant attention to you are affecting our marriage. I feel like he's more invested in your problems than in our life together. That's not my fault, she retorted, her voice rising. Maybe you should talk to your husband about that. I have. I said, my voice cracking. But he just dismisses my concerns. He says I'm being paranoid. But the change in him has been so obvious. He's distant, less affectionate. It feels like he's emotionally involved with you. She stood up, her eyes flashing with anger. Look, I don't know what kind of marriage you have, but Mark and I are just friends. He's been a good colleague, and I'm grateful for his support. If you have issues with your husband, you need to sort them out with him, not come here and accuse me of something that isn't happening. Then why all the secrecy? I asked, my voice pleading now. Why the vague explanations? Why does he seem so unwilling to talk about his relationship with you? She hesitated for a moment, and I thought I saw a flicker of something in her eyes, maybe guilt. But it was gone as quickly as it appeared. There's nothing to be secretive about, she said firmly. You're clearly just insecure. Her words stung. Maybe I was being insecure. But the way Mark had been acting felt so wrong. I love my husband, I said, my voice barely a whisper. And I'm scared of losing him. This friendship. It feels like it's coming between us. Chloe softened slightly, but her tone remained cool. I understand you're worried, but you need to trust your husband. If he says nothing is going on, then you should believe him. But what if I can't? I asked, tears welling up in my eyes. What if my gut is telling me something different? She sighed. Then that's a problem between you and Mark. I'm not going to apologize for having a supportive colleague. The conversation felt like hitting a brick wall. She wasn't going to admit anything, even if something was going on. I realized that confronting her directly probably wasn't the best approach. It had just made her defensive and hadn't given me any real answers. Defeated and emotionally drained, I turned and walked away. As I left the office, I saw Mark walking towards me, his face a mask of shock and anger. What the hell were you doing here? He hissed, pulling me aside. I wanted to talk to her, I said, my voice flat. You confronted Chloe? He exclaimed, his voice incredulous. Are you crazy? What did you say? I recounted the conversation, the defensiveness, the lack of any real answers. He listened, his anger growing with each word. You embarrassed me, he said, his voice low and furious. What do you think this looks like? Showing up at her workplace and harassing her? I wasn't harassing her, I said, my own anger starting to rise. I was trying to understand why my husband is spending more time and energy on her than on me. She's going through a tough time, he repeated, the same tired excuse. And I was just being a friend. Now you've made things incredibly awkward at work. So your concern is for how this makes you look at work? I asked, my voice laced with sarcasm. What about how this whole situation makes me feel? The constant worry, the feeling of being replaced? The argument escalated quickly. He accused me of being controlling and jealous. I accused him of being emotionally unfaithful, even if nothing physical had happened, though honestly, at this point, I wasn't ruling anything out. It was the worst fight we'd ever had. He ended up sleeping in the spare room that night. The silence between us was thick with unspoken accusations and hurt. Since then, things have been awful. He's been cold and distant, blaming me for causing drama at his work. I feel even more isolated and alone than before. I tried to get answers, and all I got was more conflict and a deeper wedge driven between us. I don't know what to do now, Reddit. I feel like I've made things worse. Was confronting Chloe a mistake? Should I have handled it differently? I'm still no closer to knowing the truth, but the trust in my marriage feels like it's shattered. I'm scared for what the future holds. Final update, it all exploded and I lost everything. Reddit, I never thought I'd be writing this kind of update. After the disastrous confrontation with Chloe and the subsequent fight with Mark, things went from bad to catastrophically worse. The tension in our house was suffocating. We were like two strangers living under the same roof, barely speaking, the air thick with resentment and unspoken accusations. Mark was furious with me for going to his office. He kept saying I had humiliated him and Chloe, made his workplace unbearable. He downplayed his relationship with her, insisting I was blowing things way out of proportion due to my own insecurities. Every attempt I made to talk about my feelings, my worries about their closeness, was met with defensiveness and accusations of distrust. One evening, about a week after the confrontation, it all came to a head. I had been looking through some old photos of Mark and me, remembering happier times, and a wave of sadness washed over me. I missed the man I used to know, the connection we used to share. When Mark came home late, again, I was already on edge. "We need to talk," I said, my voice trembling slightly. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Can't it wait? I had a rough day." "No, it can't wait," I insisted. "I feel like we're drifting further and further apart, and you don't even seem to care." "Of course I care," he said, but his tone lacked conviction. "But you need to trust me. Nothing is going on with Chloe." "Then why are you so angry that I talked to her?" I challenged. "If it's just an innocent friendship, why the huge reaction?" He exploded. "Because you embarrassed me. You showed up at my workplace like some crazy, jealous wife. What did you think that would accomplish? I thought maybe I'd get some honesty." I yelled back, my own anger boiling over. "Something you haven't been giving me. You're constantly talking to her, staying late for her, and you expect me to just sit here and pretend it's normal?" "It is normal," he insisted. "You're just insecure and trying to control me." "Control you?" I scoffed. "I just want to feel like I'm still your priority. I feel like she's become more important to you than I am." That seemed to hit a nerve. He looked away, a muscle twitching in his jaw. "That's not true," he mumbled, but his lack of conviction spoke volumes. "Then show me," I pleaded. "Show me that I'm still important to you. Stop with the late nights, put your phone down when we're together, talk to me like you used to." He remained silent for a long moment, and then he said the words that felt like a knife twisting in my gut. Maybe we want different things now." The air in the room seemed to thicken. It felt like time stopped. Those words hung between us, heavy and final. "What are you saying?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. He finally looked at me, and the expression on his face was one I had never seen before, distant, detached, almost relieved. I think maybe we should consider separating." The world tilted. My knees felt weak, and I had to grab the back of a chair to steady myself. Separating? After 10 years? After everything we had built? Because of this friendship? Are you serious? I asked, my voice choked with tears. He nodded slowly, avoiding my gaze. "I think I've grown closer to Chloe. She understands me in a way you don't seem to anymore." The confession hit me like a physical blow. It wasn't just a friendship. He had developed feelings for her, and apparently, those feelings were reciprocated. The betrayal was immense, crushing. We had a few more tense, tearful conversations over the next few days. He didn't deny his feelings for Chloe. He said she was supportive and understood his ambitions in a way I didn't. It was all the clichés you hear about affairs, even though he still maintained nothing physical had happened, though I highly doubted it. The reality was stark and brutal. He wanted out. He wanted to be with her. And despite everything we had shared, everything I had tried to salvage, he was gone. The divorce proceedings were swift and painful. He had already, it turned out, spoken to a lawyer. I felt blindsided, like he had been planning this for a while. The division of assets was relatively straightforward, but the emotional toll was devastating. The home we had built together, the future we had planned, all of it was gone, shattered because of his infatuation with a younger coworker. The ending of this story isn't a happy one, Reddit. There's no triumphant moment where I expose Chloe or Mark comes crawling back. Instead, I'm left picking up the pieces of my life, dealing with the raw pain of betrayal and the bitter taste of loss. He's now with Chloe. I see their social media posts sometimes, the forced smiles, the "we're so happy" captions. It's like a constant reminder of what I lost and why. My friends have been supportive, but there's a deep loneliness that I can't shake. I trusted Mark implicitly, and he threw it all away for someone he barely knew compared to the decade we shared. The insecurity I felt wasn't paranoia, it was my intuition screaming at me, and I wish I had listened to it sooner, or perhaps been more forceful in my attempts to address it. So, that's it. My marriage ended because of his friendship with Chloe. I confronted it, and it blew up in my face. The outcome is unfavorable, to say the least. I'm starting over in my late 30s, heartbroken and with a deep-seated fear of trusting anyone again. Sometimes, your gut feeling is right, and sometimes, even when you try to fight for your relationship, it's not enough. Thanks for listening, Reddit. I needed to say it all, even if the ending is this bleak.